Funding for Shaperillis is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Sorry this took so long, gamers. I just had to beat this game 6 times before I finally felt ready to make a video on it. Honestly, I probably could have gone for a 7th playthrough, but oh well. I think I've prepped long enough. Pikmin 4 is easily my favorite installment in the Pikmin series. And that fact alone is astonishing, considering how Pikmin 1 and 3 are 2 of my top 20 favorite games of all time. I ran the numbers, and Pikmin 4 is honestly so good that I'd call it one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. Believe me, I remained pretty cautious of recency bias, and I didn't want that to affect my assessment of the game, but I think 6 entire playthroughs of it are enough to set my opinion in stone, at least for a long while. I legitimately didn't think this was possible. Both the game topping Pikmin 3 and becoming my all-time favorite, and the game even existing in the first place. In case you don't know the stories passed through the generations, the wait for this game in particular has been agonizing. Not just because there was a 10-year gap between the releases of 3 and 4, outdoing the much more reasonable 9-year gap between 2 and 3, but the entire Pikmin fanbase had been strung along for years by this one stupid f***ing article that came out in 2015, 2 years after Pikmin 3. Pikmin 4 is in development and very close to completion, Shigeru Miyamoto apparently told Eurogamer in an interview. This is already a weird thing to say, considering this company is usually very secretive about their upcoming releases, and they choose to save new game reveals for Nintendo Directs. But it's made even weirder by the fact that the years went on, and Pikmin 4 just didn't come out. What was he talking about? A lot of fans started to speculate that Miyamoto was actually referring to the 3DS spin-off Hey Pikmin, which released a couple years later in 2017. We fucking hoped he wasn't. But that idea started to become more and more accepted as the years went on, and we continue to not hear a single peep about Pikmin 4. I honestly feel like the wait wouldn't have been nearly as bad if it wasn't for this damn article giving us false hope, taunting us with the notion that, oh yeah, it totally exists. You'll just never play it because it's never coming out. F*** you. Pikmin 4 became this elusive white whale. The game we just couldn't get our hands on even though it did exist. Maybe. It has to, right? He wasn't just talking about the boring-ass 3DS game, was he? Now, it wasn't like the Switch era was devoid of Pikmin. If there's one thing Nintendo liked doing, it was porting over games from their failed Wii U system onto the Switch. And it took a while, but in 2020, we finally got Pikmin 3 Deluxe, an enhanced port of the Wii U game with co-op and brand new bonus missions added. Finally, some crumbs for us to feast on. And then there's Pikmin Bloom, a walking app for your phone, which is pretty fun for what it is. I actually got a lot of use out of it. I guess it can help me come to terms with the pain of never playing a new mainline Pikmin again. And then, it happened. September 13th, 2022. A Nintendo Direct airs, and in it, Shiggy himself shows up to talk about the Mario theme park thing or whatever, I don't know. And then, he suddenly says, it's time to talk about Pikmin. Excuse me? Could this be the hour? He says they're still working on the series. Does it mean? Nope, here's Pikmin Bloom, the mobile game that's been out for like a year. Bro, what are you doing? Who cares? Do you have anything to share about any other Pikmin thing? Anything at all? And then it happened for real. The moment I had been waiting for almost a decade. Pikmin 4. In the flesh. It felt too good to be true. My most anticipated video game of all time, coming out in only a year. I'll never forget what a momentous occasion this was for myself and the Pikmin community at large. We were speculating about what Miyamoto meant by the new and different camera angle, wondering if the captain we see was Brittany or Brittany's sister or something, I don't know, and discussing what the new emphasis on Dandori meant for the series. Turns out we were always doing Dandori in these games, strategically planning the most efficient manner to complete tasks. This was just the first game in the series to actively give it its proper name. And yeah, from then on, the wait wasn't too bad. We got a couple more trailers showcasing cool new aspects of the game, the surprise release of Pikmin 1 and 2 ports on the Switch in order to build up hype, and finally, the main event. Pikmin 4 released on what is perhaps the best overall day for entertainment ever. July 21st, 2023. Barbenheimer Day. Oh man, what a weekend. You had to be there. So yeah, now that we've gotten the insane build up to release out of the way, why don't we talk about the game itself? Pikmin 4 obviously had a lot to live up to after taking 10 years to come out. But the crazy thing is, in my opinion, it honestly exceeded every expectation I had. Not only is it packed with so much more content than any of the previous games, but it manages to stand as pretty much the ultimate Pikmin game, taking elements and cues from every previous installment in the series and mixing them all together with tons of its own original and engaging ideas. It's a love letter to fans of every single one of the previous 3 games, but its large and lovingly crafted, nostalgia-filled tributes are merely the icing on a refreshing and original cake that feels like a true evolution of the series as a whole. I can't hold back any longer. We need to talk about this masterpiece of a game. Let's jump on in. To start out, let's talk about your motivation. Pikmin 4 is the first game in the series to let you make your own OC. It's not the deepest character creation tool, but it's pretty charming. One thing I really like is that the color you select for your character to wear will end up being the color for every other character's outfit, as well as your ship. That's awesome. Some days I'm feeling like orange, and others I'm feeling blue. So that's a cute little way to spice repeat playthroughs up. But once your character's made, you're tasked with rescuing Captain Olimar, as well as any other castaways you come across. Much like Pikmin 1 and 3, I'm glad your motivation here is saving lives. It works in tandem with the super fun gameplay to really drive you, and it's satisfying to rescue other characters and have them turn up at your home base, especially since all of them have side objectives for you to complete. It's a great motivation, but even I gotta admit, there was something very satisfying about adding up the value of all the collectibles in Pikmin 2. If only those could come back too. Hey, look at that! Pikmin 4 brings back varied collectibles of all shapes and sizes, with your motivation to grab them being to get your hands on Sparklium. This shiny stuff allows you to get enough fuel to explore new areas. Now, I actually saw a lot of people upset about this because Sparklium is not a new concept to the series. It actually originated in Hey Pikmin. So how dare this game have the gall to reference Hey Pikmin? Look, I am the #1 Hey Pikmin unenjoyer. I don't dislike it for being different, I just think it's boring. Believe me, I have tried to play it 4 or 5 times, and I could not finish it any of those times. You guys really latched onto the idea of me not liking Pikmin 2, which is the opposite of the truth, because I do like it, and I've beaten it 7 times over the course of my life. So if you want to associate me with not liking any Pikmin game, here it is. I can't stand Hey Pikmin's fake ass. With that said, I think it's cute that this game references it. I don't know. I don't really understand why anyone would be upset by that. Also, if you like Hey Pikmin, then, you know, more power to you. I don't think it's a bad game, it's just not my thing. Okay, sorry to open with a Hey Pikmin tangent right off the bat. Let's get back to the cool game now. Pikmin 4 resembles the gameplay of previous entries in the series, obviously. But there's a lot of cool new additions that make it distinct. For example, raw materials. These are your bread and butter. A multi-purpose collectible you can grab in the overworld and use for all sorts of things. Bridge pieces are now tied to them. You grab a pile and each unit of material is converted into a bridge piece. It's a nice alternate take on how Pikmin 3 scatters bridge pieces across the overworld. But there's also another important use for these things, using them as currency for upgrades. You always have to be mindful of not spending all your materials at the upgrade shop, since if you come across a bridge that needs to be built, you want to have plenty on hand for that. It's a nice balance you have to strike thanks to a super streamlined collectible. It would probably be really easy to add in a second collectible type so that there's one for bridges and one for upgrades, but I really like how they're the same collectible and you have to put some thought into what you're spending them on. Another new addition that some people didn't like, but I really enjoyed, is Flarlick. I'm gonna assume that's how it's pronounced. Every other game in the series, you have the right to take out 100 Pikmin as soon as you grow enough of them. But in this game, fuck you, you get 20. You need to collect these oniony objects in the overworld, and each one increases the max amount of Pikmin you can use by 10. They're pretty plentiful, so it doesn't come off as a huge hindrance. It makes for such satisfying progression when you grab a new one and earn the ability to add an extra 10 Pikmin to your squad. So between this, the many piles of raw materials, and the insane amount of treasures to grab, this game is genuinely one of the most satisfying collectathons I've ever played. Can we call it a collectathon if it's not a platformer? Is that allowed? I mean, you can jump onto some platforms in the game. That's platforming, right? Oh yeah, I should probably mention the biggest new addition that enables said jumping. You know him, you love him, it's Ochi. I was pretty skeptical of them adding a dog in the trailers. Like, that didn't seem like something the series needed. And now, 6 playthroughs of this game later, I literally cannot imagine any future installment without a dog in it. Ochi is the most precious specimen to ever exist. He basically functions as a hybrid of a captain and a Pikmin, being able to command his own squad and separate from the player character for multitasking purposes, while also being able to carry things back and fight enemies in his own right. And the great thing about Ochi is that there's a wonderful progression system to him too. You can get upgrades for him in the shop, which raise his attack power, carrying capacity, the works. By the time you reach the end of the game, Ochi is basically a god. But the nice thing is, you can also ignore most of these upgrades if you don't want them and you just want to solely focus on good old-fashioned Pikmin commanding. But I like God Ochi, so I don't do that. All of these elements come together to make the most satisfying gameplay progression in the whole series. Pikmin 1, your player character remains the exact same the entire time. Not really a problem for such a short game, but yeah. Pikmin 3, you can grab some hidden upgrades, but I'm gonna be honest, I always forget most of these exist, and I don't use the ones that I do remember exist. Pikmin 2 used to be the king of this whole upgrade thing, with almost every cave offering a new permanent buff of some sort. Better attack power, faster movement speed, the ability to lie down, which doesn't accomplish much. It's all here! Pikmin 4 takes most of what 2 did, adds a ton of cool new features of its own, offers Ochi a ton of new skills to acquire, and puts all of it in your hands. You can choose what to prioritize, and that's super cool. This is on top of how satisfying grabbing a new Flarlick is, plus rescuing castaways and seeing your home base expand over time. The extensive upgrade system and constant sense of progression just feel amazing. I do kinda wish the game had a New Game Plus though, just so I could decimate the opening areas with God Ochi. Anyway, there's one more brand spanking new addition we need to talk about. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to stay on the planet's surface at night and do battle with the nocturnal creatures there? Oh, they thought of everything. Pikmin 4 introduces night missions to the series. And while these admittedly aren't my favorite thing in the world, they are a pretty nice change of pace compared to the regular gameplay. You're given Glow Pikmin, these cute little green guys who are OP as all hell. They're immune to every hazard type, and if you leave them idle, they'll just teleport to your side. It's really fun to use these guys to stun enemies and grab star bits, and as overpowered as they are, they still don't really undermine just how challenging some of the later night missions can be. There's not much to say about this mode. What you see is what you get. It's a fun flavor change from the regular gameplay, and that's about it. So yeah, Pikmin 4 is not hurting in terms of bringing new ideas to the table. It very much feels like its own distinct entry in the series, just like the first 3 did. I love when every single installment in a franchise can stand on its own, and none of them are too similar to each other. And one of Pikmin 4's main claims to fame compared to previous entries is just how large it is. It offers huge areas for you to find treasure and caves in, while also providing every single previous Pikmin type at your disposal. Except Baldman, sorry. Everyone else is here though, and that's cool, so let's talk about them. Pikmin 4 has the largest and most content-rich areas in the entire series. Exploring them all is a joy, and it's made even better by the fact that each area in this game offers the ability to change your base's location. This makes for such satisfying Dandori, since you don't have to worry about your troops carrying something all the way across this big-ass expanse. There are so many places to explore and so much to find. Not only the caves and Dandori challenges, but also raw materials, Flarlick, new onions, and just an absolute buttload of treasures. The game offers 6 main areas, the most of any installment in the series. And on top of that, none of them are small and simple glorified tutorial or boss arenas. They're all expansive, full portions of the game. As a trade-off, however, a lot of the areas lack aesthetical variety, particularly the first 2 areas, Sun-Speckled Terrace and Blossoming Arcadia. I don't know, man, for the life of me, I can't really tell these 2 apart, but they're not bad. It would be nice if one of them was snowy, since those areas are always gorgeous, and it feels like a step back from 2 and 3 to not have one for variety's sake. I mean, it just makes sense given the new emphasis on ice, as well as a new tool you get for burning things. But oh well, I can live without it. The last 2 areas of this game are pretty distinct and memorable though. The Giant's Hearth sticks out for being loaded with roadblocks that require you to strategize on how to overcome them with your reds and blues. It's all tied together with this large, man-made fire pit in the center you need to climb. Just a cool and fairly challenging area to traverse. The Primordial Thicket, meanwhile, is just untamed wilderness laced with sticky mud and poison hazards. You really gotta clear these paths out if you want to get anywhere in terms of carrying stuff back, which really makes it feel like you're taming the wilderness. Wow, crazy. However, the middle 2 areas are easily my favorites in the game, and some of my favorites in the whole series. Hero's Hideaway is the most distinct area Pikmin has ever had, for obvious reasons. I never thought we would explore a house outside of some non-canon mission mode stages, but lo and behold, here we are. It reminds me a lot of that game Tinykin, which I played because it resembled Pikmin, and this was during the great Pikmin drought. It's a really great game, you should play it. But yeah, that game prioritizes indoor environments, which is one of many elements that really differentiates itself from Pikmin. Until this area happened, and now it just feels like I'm playing Tinykin. Regardless, exploring a house is not only an incredibly novel and different concept for the series, but it's just damn fun from a gameplay perspective. It has a lot of verticality, and you can use a ton of different methods to get on top of different structures. From fans you gotta turn on, climbing walls, floating platforms, secret tunnels! And then when you do get to those high up locations, you find a sink you can drain, macarons ready to be served on plates, a dungeon inside of a stove that you can only bring red Pikmin and an upgraded fire-resistant Ochi to, an ice box that contains the ice Pikmin onion, the homophobic dog which patrols the area and kidnaps stray Pikmin. There's just so much to this area that it manages to feel even more alive than some of the more natural locations. I always get so excited when I get to it. It's one of Pikmin's most refreshing and original ideas to date. Now, if you're someone who cares about Pikmin's world building, you might be questioning why this house is in such pristine condition when humanity is supposed to be long dead. But honestly, those questions never really bothered me because this planet is so fucking weird for so many reasons that I assume there's some off-screen explanation for why the house looks so nice and not dusty. Maybe the enemies living here maintain it, who knows? Pikmin is weird. Speaking of logistical things, I guess I should take a brief break and talk about the timeline controversy. So this game never explicitly acknowledges that the first 3 happened, and some people believe it to be a soft reboot as a result. There are references to the first 3 games, but no outright confirmation that they're in the same continuity. The fanbase kind of erupted when they found out that this game might be a retcon of everything that came before it. And my personal take on this controversy is that I don't really care. I just like to pretend this game takes place after the first 3 and that Alamar just forgot all this stuff. Nothing is really stopping me from doing that. Pikmin is not this story-heavy franchise that rides or dies by its continuity. Yeah, if I was making this game, I would have explicitly referenced the events of the first 3 and made it clear that this was in the same continuity. But the fact that it doesn't, it's a little weird, but I cannot stress how much I don't really mind. Let's talk about more fun areas now. As cool and unique as Hero's Hideaway is, I think my favorite area in the entire game has to be the one right before it. Serene Shores. I'm kinda shocked the series never did a beach level until now, because it's a perfect fit. Not only are the vibes immaculate, with gorgeously realized underwater sections and a super fun sandcastle for you to climb and become the king of, but halfway through the day, most of the water in the area drains, meaning you can accomplish a lot more tasks with non-blue Pikmin than you could before. They really are not beating the useless allegations, are they? Oh well, this gimmick is awesome and adds a whole nother level of Dandori no other area in the series has ever had. I always have a blast exploring Serene Shores. It's just so damn good. Now, one somewhat divisive aspect about these areas is the fact that you're only ever allowed to have 3 types of Pikmin at once while exploring. Not only that, the game straight up gives you recommendations on which types you should be using. You don't have to listen to the game, but you'll quickly find out that doing so would be helpful because of the types of hazards you'll encounter in each area. The reason I don't actually mind this restriction is twofold. 1, this game brings back every type of Pikmin, on top of a new edition, making for 8 types in total. I don't know, man, that kinda sounds like a mess trying to manage 8 of these types at once. Restricting you to only have to worry about 3 for each area doesn't really bother me, and it allows different types of Pikmin to get their own time to shine in certain areas. Similarly, each type at least has a couple dedicated caves where they're gonna get a lot of use. That's not to say the balance of usefulness in this game is perfect. Like, yellows in particular really fall off in terms of utility, wings have been nerfed to hell in terms of helpfulness, etc. But thanks to specific caves and Dandori challenges, it's not like you're never gonna use them. They all get a chance to shine here and there. Now, I'm not gonna rank type usefulness in this game, because there's a lot of things to consider with that, but I did want to point out a few aspects of each type that I really appreciate in this game. I never felt like there was any reason to use reds in 2 and 3, since purples and rocks outclass them in combat, and fire hazards aren't really the deadliest things in the world. 4 finally gives them a reason to be used thanks to these fire starters that can destroy straw obstacles. I really like this new use for them. It adds a lot of strategy when you're trying to figure out if you can take a fire starter from one section of the map to another before it runs out. Those darn purples are back. And while they don't stun enemies anymore, probably for the best, they're still super helpful in combat. Easily one of the best types in the game once again. But they don't feel as brain dead to use. And of course, I can't just not talk about the Ice Pikmin, who are easily among my favorites in the whole series. The sheer amount of utility they have, from freezing lakes so you can walk across them, to freezing enemies if they get eaten, or if you toss enough of them onto one. Basically the same ability as the purple spray from Pikmin 2, but more balanced since it's not as easy as pressing one button and instantly immobilizing your foe. Okay, I guess it is pretty easy once you get a whole army of Ices and you charge them all onto an enemy with Ochi. But Ice Pikmin are still a rare commodity until you get their onion in the 4th area. I actually really love how anyone who isn't red, blue, or yellow only gets an onion late into the game. Meaning for a while, you'll have limited numbers of purples, whites, rocks, wings, and Ices to work with. This absolutely helps balance the more overpowered types, while also eventually allowing you to earn the chance to easily spawn more of them. More on that later. So, while Pikmin 4 obviously brings a lot of new stuff to the table, I think you can tell just from the inclusion of every previous type alone that this game really cares about pleasing fans of all 3 previous installments in the franchise. Also, hey Pikmin, if you want to count the return of Sparklium. Does that game have any fans though? Anyway, there's way more to this than just the return of all these types. Why don't we work our way backwards here and talk about how each individual game is paid tribute to. Starting, of course, with my previously favorite installment.
But then again, how can I play Pikmin 3? There's no SQUARESPACE in it. That didn't make any sense at all, but hey, while we're on the subject, Squarespace is an amazing online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. Start a completely personalized website with the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. There are so many professionally curated layout and styling options you can use to craft a unique online presence tailored to your brand or business, and optimized for every device. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated, optimized SEO tools, so you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. Running a business is so easy with Squarespace thanks to their simple but powerful payment tools. Accept credit cards, PayPal, and Apple Pay. And in eligible countries, offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. These seamless checkout options allow you to easily sell exclusive content on your site. And so does the ability to add a paywall to sell memberships or courses, or sell files your customers can download, like PDFs, music, or ebooks. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ShadeForAList to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Pikmin 3 is perhaps the previous game with the least overt tributes in 4. None of the bosses make a return, and neither do its main characters, Alf, Brittany, and Charlie. You know, the game would rather introduce new and original characters for you to meet, like Blauf, Blitney, and Blarley.
These characters are the original property of Nintendo, all rights reserved, do not steal.
Now, I didn't really need a ton of tributes from the very last game in the franchise that had also been available on Switch for 3 years at the time this new one came out. But there was one thing I was hoping for. One special something that brought Pikmin 3 over the top to be my previous favorite in the series. Mission mode. Oh my god, I could not get enough of replaying these missions and trying to get better and better times. What an absolute delight. I just needed those back, and I got really worried when I saw the title screen and noticed the distinct lack of missions. So, I huffed some copium and said, okay, maybe you just have to unlock them. And like, I wasn't wrong, but I also was not expecting them to be implemented in this way. Pikmin 4 took a look at this side mode from the previous game and said, yeah, that's a banger. How about we incorporate that into the main story? So now, in addition to the return of Pikmin 2-like caves, some of these mysterious holes will instead be guarded by leaflings, who insist you beat their Dandori challenges. Just a brilliant way of organically adding 3's best feature into your campaign. Now, I'll fully admit that these stages aren't peak Dandori like the ones in 3 were. They certainly scratch that same itch incredibly well. But without utilizing 3 captains for maximum efficiency, they're a short step behind. And there's also no Christmas level, which is lame. But like, oh no, playing these isn't a 10 out of 10 experience. It's only a 9.8 out of 10 experience. Seriously though, one great advantage of the Dandori missions in 4 is Ochi, to the point where going back to 3 stages just kind of makes me miss him the entire time. Once again, he's just this perfect multi-purpose tool who can act as a captain, an entire squad of Pikmin, or a tough enemy killing machine. Sometimes if there's an annoying creature I don't want to fight, I just use the go here command, another great feature carried over from Pikmin 3 I should add, and I send Ochi there. As long as his health and damage are upgraded enough, pretty much nothing stands a chance against him. That's another great feature of these Dandori stages, the ability to replay them as you upgrade Ochi more and more. At first, he can't really do much. He can't bite a Bulborb to death, he can't swallow a melon whole and bring it back to your base, but eventually, he can. And more time saves open up to you. Your strategy adapts as Ochi adapts. A satisfying sensation that the Pikmin 3 stages lacked, since everything you could accomplish in those stages was there from the start. Getting an amazing time you didn't think possible on a stage, thanks to the new possibilities Ochi provides, is such an incredible feeling. And successfully switching between his many uses, from throwing Pikmin to taking down enemies single-handedly, to rapidly digging up, knocking down, and carrying back some absolutely massive treasures that you would have needed way too many Pikmin for, it just makes you feel like a Dandori fiend. A true master of the art. Ochi and Dandori are a match made in heaven, and every day I thank the Lord my God for putting Ochi in my life. Oh yeah, this isn't in the script, but I just remembered I never mentioned this in the future. The Pluckaphone is f***ing back, bitches. This was one of my favorite additions in 2, and it was absent from 3, but oh my god, it's one of the last upgrades you get for yourself in this game, and it just demolishes your Dandori skills since you don't have to pluck Pikmin in these stages anymore. Amazing. As a massive fan of 3, I don't think it comes as a big surprise that these Dandori missions are my favorite part of this entire game. However, that's not to discount the sheer number of other amazing types of gameplay 4 has at its disposal. For example, there was another thing on the Pikmin 3 menu besides story and mission modes. Bingo Battle. This super fun multiplayer mode makes its grand return here, kinda. They basically removed the bingo from Bingo Battle, so now it's just battle. I wish they could have had an option to play with the bingo rule set. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard to implement. But much like mission mode, while this new version is simplified compared to its predecessor, it's still a ton of fun, and Ochi adds a very unique flavor of enjoyment. First, let's talk about its single player implementation, because, oh yeah, they also put the battles in the main campaign. First is your encounters with Bizarro Olimar, and then is your brawls with Louie. It naturally fits the story, though I will admit, fighting a CPU in this mode isn't the most interesting thing. It's fun to see your high score go up, but I like racing against the clock better than racing against an easy computer player. It's not bad, just probably the weakest part of the main campaign for me. But multiplayer is where this mode really shines. Getting into tug-of-war matches for a fruit that'll give you a bonus, and avoiding the wrath of that godforsaken sneak bomb. I can't tell you just how much fun I've had with this mode in the past few months. Now, if only it had online. Seriously, Nintendo, what the f*** are you doing? I promise you this game would sell 1 pikillion copies if you just added online to the multiplayer mode. So yeah, suffice to say, the brilliant side modes from Pikmin 3 are very well represented here. And this game also carries over some excellent quality of life features like the Go Here function. I do sometimes miss having 3 captains for Dandori purposes, but I appreciate that it didn't just continue the trend of adding a new captain to match the number of the game. 4 captains would have been excessive, but Ochi is a brilliant addition, as I said before. So that's my old favorite game in the series covered. Next up is... you know, that one. Pikmin 2 is the most overtly homaged game in 4, to the point where it wouldn't be a stretch to call this game Pikmin 2-2. The same way Pikmin 3 was basically just Pikmin 1-2. See, the math actually adds up there, it's foolproof. But yeah, Pikmin 3 was essentially a refinement of 1's gameplay philosophies. It ignored 2's complete lack of a time limit and its cave systems, instead choosing to give us more of what worked about 1. Obviously, I was a big fan of that philosophy, and within the context of what was previously just the trilogy, it felt like Pikmin 2 was a weird middle chapter Nintendo didn't really want to continue building off of. In a similar vein to, say, Super Mario Bros. 2. They'll keep elements from those games, you know, Shy Guys, Louie, the works. But when it comes time to complete the trilogy, let's get back to the core of what worked about that first installment. Obviously, this no longer applies to Pikmin 2, however. It finally has its spiritual successor, just like how Pikmin 1 has 3. And based on my personal preferences, you'd think 4 would just not hit the same as 1 and 3. The time limit is gone, the caves are back. The emphasis is once again being placed on taking your time, rather than maximizing your Dandori and getting everything done in as few in-game days as possible. By all accounts, Pikmin 4 should be seen as a betrayal of everything I hold dear about the Pikmin series. Just like 2 was, right? Okay, I guess it's time to address the elephant in the room. There's been a lot of frustration with my take on Pikmin 2 over the years. Although why any Pikmin 2 fan would have anything but peaches and cream to say about me is a mystery. Nah, but truth be told, Pikmin 4 has kind of shifted my perspective on what 2 was trying to accomplish. And I kind of fundamentally disagree with a lot of my approach in that video. See, Pikmin 2 doesn't misunderstand the appeal of Pikmin. It simply takes its basic elements and branches out into its own entirely new experience. As an example, let's take a look at the Zelda series. Let's say you've only played the classics that really set the basic formula in place: Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. And you think, this is what Zelda is. Running around this interconnected world, beating dungeons, acquiring a new item, and rescuing sages in each one, and finally defeating Ganon. This is the essence of what Zelda is. So anyway, here's Majora's Mask. What the hell? There's no Ganon in this game. There's no sages to save. And all of this is under a bullshit time limit? Man, I don't know. I think they fundamentally misunderstood what Ocarina of Time was going for. Wind Waker. You can't run around an interconnected world. It's just a bunch of islands broken up by sailing. Bullshit. They fundamentally misunderstood what Ocarina of Time was going for. Twilight Princess? Okay, yeah, no, that's just Ocarina of Time too. Skyward Sword is too linear. This isn't what Zelda is about. Breath of the Wild? Oh, don't even get me started. Where's the structure? Why do the dungeons suck? You don't even get items in them. There are no pieces of heart in the overworld. I don't know what they were thinking, but this fundamentally misunderstands the appeal of Zelda. Anyway, that all probably sounded really stupid to you, right? None of these games are fundamental betrayals of the concept of a Zelda game. They are all unique takes that deserve to exist. They all strive to achieve different goals compared to one another, and all of them are somebody's favorite. And, newsflash, the same is true for Pikmin 2. It was ambitious. It strived to flesh out the core concept of commanding an army of plant creatures and collecting items, and it did so in its own incredibly distinct way. Pikmin 3, placing the focus on above-ground multitasking, does not diminish what Pikmin 2 did or prove it was a failure in concept. Wind Waker didn't keep the 3-day time limit. Does that make Majora's Mask a failure? Though I think the key distinction between Zelda and Pikmin is that there are like 20 Zelda games. So if you don't like one of them, you're really not hurting in terms of other options to pick from. Pikmin only had 3 games for the past decade, so not loving a third of the entire series really stung for me. But not only has the release of a new, incredibly content-rich Pikmin game softened the blow, the fact that 4 utilizes a lot of what 2 did has really made me reevaluate what it is to be a Pikmin game. Racing against the clock is just one small part of the series. There's a lot of value to the slow, methodical dread of the cave system, from managing your Pikmin numbers to avoiding traps and the always changing enemy formations. I personally am not a fan of slowly scouting ahead without my Pikmin in order to trigger every rock and bomb that falls from the ceiling. But hey, maybe some people are. Maybe going on these treacherous spelunking missions is a much richer and more rewarding experience than trying to rush and grab everything in the overworld as fast as possible. That's the beauty of Pikmin 2 branching out in terms of its gameplay. And perhaps the removal of the time limit, a difficult feature in and of itself, is why they felt comfortable increasing the difficulty in these caves. The first and second games are hard, but maybe someone prefers them for different reasons, and that's kind of neat. Ultimately, a lot of my problems with Pikmin 2 just boil down to personal preference, and not any inherent problems with the game's design. I don't like the fact that the caves are randomly generated, but maybe other players do since it keeps them fresh. I prefer multitasking and achieving maximum Dandori above ground, but maybe someone else prefers the slower and more methodical gameplay here. If I had to stick solely to more objective criticisms that don't take my personal preference into account, yeah, I still think the caves could have done a lot to be more distinct, both visually and from a gameplay perspective. I think they could have balanced the time you spend underground and on the surface a little bit better. The purple Pikmin and purple spray are both incredibly broken, and the Doomsday apparatus is still the worst thing in the series. I'm sorry, there is no defending the purple Pikmin grind this thing requires. Ultimately, Pikmin 2 is still my least favorite, in the sense that it's a 7 out of 10 for me, which is a good score because I still consider it to be a good game, and I said so in my original video, nobody likes to acknowledge that. Okay, sorry. But I mainly just like it less than the other ones because of my personal preference. Pikmin 1 and 3 are 10 out of 10 experiences for me because they're pure, unadulterated Dandori. And that's just what I personally like. But if Pikmin 2 is your favorite for completely different reasons, I totally get that and I respect your opinion. But wait. If Pikmin 4 is the spiritual successor to 2, and it does away with the main structure of 1 and 3, how exactly is it my favorite of the 4? In my opinion, Pikmin 4 is a massive refinement of Pikmin 2's concepts, making them enjoyable and a welcome addition to the game. The amount of time you spend in caves is balanced so much better in this game. While in Pikmin 2, they consisted of the vast majority of the gameplay, here they're a lot shorter and thus exist as a welcome reprieve from the above ground shenanigans. Not only that, they're not randomly generated this time, meaning there's a lot more opportunity for puzzles and sections where you have to find the right route to get Ochi past barriers. It just feels nice to play something that was designed by a human. What can I say? Caves are also very worth your while in order to get any type of Pikmin that isn't red, blue, or yellow, but it's not the only method for doing so. Like I said earlier, you don't have any onions for ice, white, purple, rock, or winged Pikmin for a while, carrying over the value of finding purples and whites in 2. But unlike that game, you can finally get onions for these types in the late game areas, a truly cathartic feeling that also completely negates a repeat of the Doomsday apparatus situation. There's a big ass gold bar in the final area that you need 100 purple Pikmin for. But this time, you don't need to worry nearly as much about conserving all of them and grinding caves to get more of them. There's a purple onion locked behind some sufficiently tough challenges we'll talk about later, which is a wonderful solution to the problem. I don't think you guys understand, I hate the Doomsday apparatus with every fiber of my being. I will never pass up an opportunity to dunk on this thing. This is not something you will ever change my mind on. This is the worst treasure in all of Pikmin and I hate it so much. Anyway, I also like the visual design of this game's caves, especially the toy box and aquarium-like themes. I do wish there were a couple more themes, but hey, this is more than the shrines have in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, so that's a plus. And another great addition is showing your percentage of completion after every floor. Like, thank God we don't have to jump into these things blind as to how much time they're gonna take up. And just to ease my nitpicky brain, they actually acknowledge that time flows differently down there, and getting into a cave does eat up a small chunk of your day. Thank you, that's all I needed. I'm glad some time progression exists when you enter these caves now, instead of how Pikmin 2 basically said, let's not worry about that. So yeah, good fun times. I obviously prefer racing against the clock in the overworld or completing Dandori challenges reminiscent of Pikmin 3, but at least I can say that the caves are really good and I like them now. But aside from the caves and the overall structure of not having a deadline and collecting a wide variety of treasure, there's a lot more homages to Pikmin 2 to be found here. For instance, this game brings back a lot of enemies and bosses from 2 that weren't in 3. We see the return of old favorites like the Anodweedles, Doodlebugs, Jellyfloats, Matites, the creeping Chrysanthemum that got plastic surgery in between games because why do they look so different? Why isn't this just a different enemy? I like their old design better. But oh no! They didn't bring every enemy back. For example, the Gatling Groink isn't in Pikmin 4. Thank God! I kinda missed the Carini Dirigi bug though. I didn't mind that guy. But the returning bosses, whoo boy. We get the comeback of pretty much all the most iconic ones, like the Empress Ballblacks, the giant bread bug, the Manet Legs. Like, I'm so glad they brought back the machine gun spider so future generations could be traumatized by him. Speaking of which, oh baby, I think we all knew what was up when we encountered the Engulfed Castle that restricts you to only using blues. I wasn't expecting to see him ever again, but yep. Is the Water Wraith back and better than ever? Actually, he's pretty much the exact same, but that's okay, he was already perfect. The Water Wraith is actually a perfect example of how this game goes even farther than just paying homage to its past. If he just showed up in the engulfed castle, then I might be inclined to call this just nostalgia pandering. Really fun and enjoyable nostalgia pandering, granted, but still nostalgia pandering. But that's more so a way to reacquaint you with the Water Wraith before bringing him back in more interesting ways elsewhere. There's a mission later on where you have to retrieve a purple onion. And rather brilliantly, since purple Pikmin are his weakness, your opponent in this mission is good old Wraithy. So instead of the usual situation where you have a chance to not encounter him if you go quickly enough, here you have to carry something back while dealing with him. I really like that. It's a perfect final challenge to give you the right to use purples. And I'll talk more about the context around it in a future segment. I'll also do the same for the other Water Wraith encounter in this game. Overall, it seems like this game is just a real treat for Pikmin 2 fans. But I personally will not be satisfied until I know if Pikmin 2's single best feature was brought back. Does the Piklopedia return? You better fucking believe it returns! Best game of all time! I was kind of worried at first because when you unlock it in this game, you can only see the journal entries of Schnauz. Look, Schnauz is fine or whatever, but he's no Olimar, come on. But then once you rescue him, boom, an entire set of journal entries from the man himself. Oh man, these were such a treat to read. Just like the ones in 2. We get so much insight not only into Olimar's family life, but even his childhood, which wasn't delved into nearly as much in 2. It's so detailed and well written, and you just get lost in his prose. And later on, you unlock the journal entries of Louie, which didn't exist for the treasures in Pikmin 2, only the enemies. Hearing Louie's thoughts on fidget spinners is something I didn't know I needed. One other thing I really appreciate is how, even if there's not explicit story continuity with the previous installments, there is at least continuity with what Olimar and Louie have to say about the enemies. I never thought I would get this excited over copy-pasted text, but I think it's just really cool that they remembered what Olimar and Louie said about each foe. The same applies to the returning treasures from 2, and even the fruits you collected in 3. I don't know, seeing names like Astringent Clump and Lesser Mock Bottom again just really put a smile on my face. It just warms my heart to see this name continuity, as basic as it is. And much like everything else in this game, all this nostalgia wouldn't mean shit if it wasn't surrounded by all sorts of new ideas. But thankfully, it is. There are so many new treasures to discover and new enemies to get Louie's culinary expertise on. It's such a treat. Suffice to say, this might be an even better version of the Piklopedia than the one 2 had. The only real issue I have with it is the sound design. Not only do I miss the da-na-na-na sound from 2, but the music was just way more soothing and better to listen to as you read these. The new song does not suit this feature nearly as well, to the point where whenever I wanted to read these for a while, I just kind of muted the game and turned on the 2 Piklopedia music on my phone. Once you do that, it's peak. One more thing, I didn't really know where else to put this, but Pikmin 4 adds in a ton of items for you to purchase and use in battle. These range from bomb rocks, which you previously had to carry with you using a Pikmin, but now they exist in your inventory, to a ton of other things. Lightning bolts, ice bombs, pick carrots that stun enemies. Pikmin 4 is commonly regarded as one of the easiest games in the series. And like, I'm not gonna argue with that at all. It is extremely fun and satisfying, but there's only a few late game parts that I'd say are anywhere close to the difficulty present in 1 and 2. And I've seen a couple people complain that these items make the game even easier, to which I always say, why don't you just not use them? The same goes for upgrades for yourself and Ochi. Just don't get them and the game won't be an extreme cakewalk. I personally always forget that these items are here, and I only ever use the bomb rocks when they're required to tear down a wall, as well as sometimes in the Dandori challenges. So yeah, that's my stance on the Pikmin 4 items. Kinda OP, but I just don't use them, so it's okay. So what the hell was I talking about when I said farming purple spray in Pikmin 2 made the game too easy? Yeah, and so would farming a bunch of raw materials so you can buy bombs and lightning strikes and whatnot. If I can ignore the items in Pikmin 4 since I think they make the game too easy, it would be an insane double standard if I let my stance on the purple spray in 2 stand. Yeah, sorry about that one. Even if I reframe it as a subjective personal preference thing, it still sounds really dumb. I'm not changing my mind about the Doomsday Apparatus though. I am never shutting up about that stupid ass thing. I'm gonna start inserting my hatred of it in completely unrelated videos. Like I'll just be talking about Kung Fu Panda 3 and then I'll say, oh, by the way, the Doomsday Apparatus is the worst and least thought out collectible in the history of the Pikmin series. If that's gonna be a problem for you, unsubscribe now. I am the #1 hater of this thing. This is the last time I'll mention it in this video though, I promise. So, in conclusion, this is very much a Pikmin 2 follow-up in a lot of ways. From the caves, to the treasure collection, to the no time limit. However, in terms of the actual goal you're working towards, I'd argue it takes a few more cues from Pikmin 3. In that game, you had to explore certain areas to rescue certain people, one of which being Olimar, of course. That, on top of the Dandori challenges added alongside caves, make this game feel much like a hybrid of Pikmin 2 and 3's gameplay structure. That's pretty cool, but it does kinda beg the question. In terms of paying tribute to previous games in the series, where does this leave Pikmin 1? Well, we can start with a simple thing. Every single enemy from Pikmin 1, with the exception of the Ghoulics that got replaced with a spiritual successor, is present in Pikmin 4. That doesn't seem too crazy at first. I mean, most of the regular enemies 1 introduced are series mainstays. Yo, this game has the Bulborb in it? That's a sick Pikmin 1 reference. But in reality, there are quite a few bosses that previously only appeared in Pikmin 1, and I didn't think we'd ever see them again. Like the Puffstool. Good to see him back without the glitch that kills a lot of my Pikmin whenever I successfully attack him. Though he doesn't turn your Pikmin into Mushroom Pikmin anymore. 0 out of 10 shit game. Instead, he just makes you dance in the same way as the Rave Spider. Oh yeah, I should probably mention the Rave Spider because I didn't have him in my script before, and like, you can't make a Pikmin 4 video without mentioning the Rave Spider. There he is. He's very funny. Okay, back to the video. The Armored Cannon Beetle makes a return. I actually forgot he wasn't in 2, but hey, he's back. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys, but I've just been informed that this is misinformation. The Armored Cannon Beetle is also not back in Pikmin 4. They just made an enemy that looks identical and plays identical to him called the Horned Cannon Beetle. God, how could I make such an obvious mistake? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, they even bring back the Pearly Clam Clam. Another enemy that I'm shocked they didn't just throw into every game. Like, how hard is it to program this thing? It just sits there and opens and closes its mouth. Anyway, it's back. And they even have elemental variants of the Puffstool and Cannon Beetle. What a treat for fans of 1. Am I forgetting to mention one of the enemies? Nah, it's probably nothing. One other thing I really appreciate about this game is that it finally offers an explanation for the discrepancy between the difficult and intimidating Emperor Bulblax we fight in Pikmin 1 and the piss-easy tiny versions of it we fight in 2. Basically, this game brings back the Pikmin 2 versions of the Emperor, but it also includes the Sovereign Bulblax, a much larger and tougher version. The Pikmin 1 final boss hasn't officially been retconned into being the Sovereign Bulblax, but I feel like it's very easy to hold the headcanon that Olimar misnamed him, and this is indeed a Sovereign Bulblax in 1. I'm really glad this potential explanation exists, because wondering how the Emperors in 1 and 2 are considered the same species has kept me up at night on numerous occasions. Ultimately though, bringing back a handful of enemies isn't too special. 2 and 3 got some enemies brought back, plus key elements of their gameplay structures were adapted. Where's 1's gameplay structure tribute? Why can't we have a limited time to collect ship parts or else we die again? 1 is to this day the game with the most urgent stakes, but I feel like it's also the most alienating as a result. Pikmin 2 removed the tight time limit entirely, and 3 presented a solution that seemed urgent at first, until you realize just how far a single fruit can take you ration-wise. With 4 adopting 2's time limit philosophy nearly word for word, it seems like fans of the first game, like me, would never get anything similar to it in the series again. Boy, were we wrong! Out of nowhere, after rescuing Olimar in the story mode and bringing him to your base, you unlock Olimar's Shipwreck Tale, an entire side campaign that essentially retells the story of Pikmin 1, without any caves or Dandori missions to break up the pure, unadulterated ship part collecting magic. This campaign takes place in the existing areas, but they feel fresh with new locations for these parts and new enemies to take down for them. You're only given reds, yellows, and blues, so you can't cheese your way through anything with, say, purples or ice Pikmin. You do at least have Moss by your side, meaning you can multitask and use her special attributes to accomplish tasks. But for the most part, this is a refreshing new take on the classic gimmickless Pikmin formula. 30 ship parts that you need to collect in 30 days. That sounds pretty easy, I guess. I mean, that's just one ship part per day, you know, very doable. Well, guess what? I lied! You only get 15 days! This legit shocked me when I first gave this mode a try. Like, sure, I can pull that off, but how do you expect newcomers to do that? Well, that's the beauty of this thing being an optional side mode. You could just ignore it entirely and go about your business continuing the main story. Since it's not required to beat the game, Nintendo can up the difficulty significantly without alienating anyone. It's the perfect solution, and it's something you want to complete because doing so unlocks the Sage Leaf Trials. Another set of fairly challenging Dandori levels that culminates with you unlocking white and purple onions. This is kind of a big deal considering we've never had those onion colors in the series. And I think completing an entire alternate Olimar campaign and 10 special Dandori challenges in order to get a purple onion is well worth it. It doesn't make the game too easy because you put the work in by playing the game's most challenging content to get it. Having this onion locked behind all that is so much better than not having one at all. Olimar's mode is also brimming with fan service. From the return of the classic jingles when you collect a ship part and unlock a new area, to a recreation of Pikmin 1's ending scene, albeit this time with 90% more homophobia. One nitpick I do have with this mode is that while they recreate a lot of the ship parts from Pikmin 1, they don't go all the way and bring back all of them. Some of the 30 are just duplicates, and I think that's a little disappointing. But I can forgive them because they did bring back the secret safe and locked it behind beating the Sovereign Ball Blacks. A wonderful tribute to Pikmin 1's final boss. So I'll let the lack of every single ship part slide. I also think the setup for when you go to Hero's Hideaway is a little wonky and confusing, and it feels like it's only that way just so the events that play out here line up with the tutorial of the game. But other than that, I love Olimar's Shipwreck Tale. Spending time playing as my favorite protagonist in all of gaming is a boon, and it's such a simple yet effective burst of classic Pikmin fun. I think the most shocking thing of all is the fact that it's just included in the main game. Like, this and the ensuing Sage Leaf Trials just scream DLC. Nintendo could have easily gone that route since the main campaign is meaty enough without this addition. But they didn't. They included this entire side campaign as a part of the $60 game you're paying for. It's kind of sad that I have to praise a company for doing this, but that's just the age we live in, isn't it? I think its inclusion really just speaks to how definitively they wanted to make this game the complete Pikmin package. One that appeals to fans of all three of the original trilogy. One that just feels worth the 10-year wait. Wow, with all this praise I have for Pikmin 4, it sounds like the game must be absolutely 100% perfect, right? Anyone who's played Pikmin 4 knows exactly what the biggest problem with it is. The auto-lock. Oh my god, this thing is annoying. So basically, for the first time in the series, whenever you get near an enemy or piece of treasure, your cursor to throw Pikmin will auto-lock onto it. Well, that could be pretty helpful, I guess. Thanks for adding that. So, you might be asking, what happens if there's multiple targets nearby and it auto-locks onto the wrong one? And to that, Nintendo says, good question. This is the worst thing in the entire game. It doesn't lead to frustration too frequently, but it happens enough that you really just gotta question why they did this. Because guess what? Pikmin 3 Deluxe had a better system. You press a button to lock onto something nearby. It's so simple and elegant, and I have no clue why the follow-up game just did away with it. It also wouldn't be a problem if there was an options menu where you could turn it off, since I'm sure some players would like to play without it, but nope. Speaking of quality of life features gone wrong, the game now temporarily prevents you from tossing more Pikmin than is necessary to carry something, allowing you to preserve your squad members for other tasks. That's cool, but you might be wondering, what if I want to throw more Pikmin onto something to get it back to my base faster? And to that, Nintendo says, good question. I don't understand why this company is so allergic to options. When I'm in a Dandori mission and I need something back as soon as possible, this temporary pause on my throwing ability is really annoying. There's also the fact that enemies don't respawn in the overworld in a couple days after you kill them. Now, if this was the case in Pikmin 1, I'd be all for it, since combat in that game can be brutal. Plus, the areas aren't really that large, and they have a lot more natural terrain, so the lack of enemies wouldn't make them feel as empty. Here, the lack of enemies kind of make these areas feel empty. And it's not like killing them is that hard, so like, what gives? Why don't they respawn? In addition, this game probably has the weakest cast of characters in the entire series. This is the largest cast of any Pikmin game, and gun to my head, I could not tell you a single character trait any of them has. Gameplay reigns supreme in this series, so I can get over these guys being kinda bland. But sometimes I do long for the cute banter between Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, the constant pressure from the president and your endearingly annoying ship AI. And hell, even Olimar's end of day logs in Pikmin 1 convey so much more character than anything said by Colin or Dingo. The game with a whopping 1 character in it had a stronger cast than this. This is also a huge nitpick that doesn't really matter, but as someone who loves finishing these games in as few days as possible, I can't stand the fact that night missions take up an entire day. Maybe I'm just persona pilled, but I like to believe that you can do 2 things in 1 day. And I would have much preferred if at the end of your daytime exploration, you had a chance to explore at night right after, instead of just losing an entire in-game day on 1 night mission. This is the only game in the series where I can't get a serotonin boost from seeing how many days I can finish everything in. Even Pikmin 2, which lacks a time limit, is pretty satisfying to complete in as few days as possible. Like what? Are you telling me the protagonist has to sleep at some point, and that's why they don't do anything during the day whenever they have a night mission? Get real. Sleep is just a made-up concept by the government to sell more melatonin gummies. So that's just about everything I don't like about Pikmin 4. Nothing in this game is really a fatal flaw in my opinion. It's just a lot of little things that prevent this from being the perfect Pikmin experience. I suppose I could also criticize the overly long tutorial. It can be a little annoying on your first playthrough if you're a Pikmin pro. But the thing is, it's easily ignorable on any repeat playthroughs thanks to the button available to skip cutscenes. I breeze through this thing and get to the good stuff insanely quickly since the game doesn't force you to listen to Colin's yapping. Pikmin 3 similarly doesn't get bogged down by its tutorials because of the skip button, and Pikmin 1's tutorial is incredibly short and to the point. You know, I really intended for this video to be my rehabilitation within the Pikmin 2 community, but I'm sorry, I cannot resist. Pikmin 2 fans, how does it feel that your favorite game in the series is the only one without a skip button for the long and drawn out tutorial? Please enlighten me why this doesn't bother you. Ball is in your court. Nah, I'm just goofing. I don't think the Pikmin 2 tutorial is abysmal or anything, but I just wanted to express how skippable cutscenes for repeat playthroughs should be the industry standard. And I'm glad Pikmin 4 has it because, yeah, I would like the game significantly less if you had to sit through all this each time you play. Anyway, I think I've just about covered everything I wanted to with this game. Everything except a certain portion of it. Oh yeah, we're in the endgame now. So you might assume that I said everything there is to say about this game's story at the beginning of the video. Well, if so, you're dead wrong, kiddo. Rescuing Olimar is only the main goal for the first half of the game, a direct parallel to how paying off the debt was only your goal in the first half of Pikmin 2. Once you finally defeat him in Dandori once and for all in the 4th area of the game, that's it! Mission accomplished. The credits roll. Wow, what a fun game. I sure hope the biggest piece of shit in all of fiction doesn't show up during these credits. Oh my god! When I tell you I lost my shit when this happened. There was no indication across any of the first half of this game that Louie was gonna be in it. And then the little bitch just waddles into frame like it's no big deal. Ooh, he makes my blood boil. Anyway though, you try and take off, but it appears that Ochi's sick. Olimar recognizes the sickness and tells the crew to return to the planet's surface right away, where he explains that the exact same thing happened with Moss. The leaf on the dog's tails is preventing them from leaving the planet. A weird and creepy notion that is made even creepier by the fact that Ochi didn't originally have a leaf tail. It just happens one day when you're playing, and you don't question it until this point, where it becomes evident Ochi can't leave the planet with it on. The game does a really great job of developing the inherent bizarreness and mystery of this planet and how it operates. I went in hoping it would finally explain why every ship seems to crash on it, and instead, it left me with more questions than answers. In the best possible way, honestly. I love the sheer mysteries at play with this planet, especially because they don't need to be resolved in order for the plot to make sense. All you need to know is that Ochi's sick, and you gotta help him. This is honestly a great motivation because of how naturally attached you'll get to Ochi over the course of the game. Like, yeah, I didn't want to leave him here. In Pikmin 2, Louie can just kinda hang out for a while. Who gives a shit about him? But this is Doggo we're talking about. We need to help him immediately. And to do that, we need to track down a certain veterinarian in order to cure his leaf tail. This is where our good old friend Louis comes in. See, in Pikmin 2 and 3, Louis did some questionable things. Olimar and the ship speculated that Louis might have been controlling the final boss and trying to murder you. But he probably wasn't. Don't worry about it. He stole the Kopite's entire supply of juice. But like, he was just hungry. Give him a break. Oh, that rascal Louis. He's such a troublemaker. Now for the first time in Pikmin 4, he is unambiguously malicious and antagonistic. He teamed up with the homophobic dog and they are now kidnapping people and forcibly trying to turn them into leaflings. Why? What the f is his problem? I don't know, and yet I don't even want to know. It's just so funny. This is the insane progression of Louis' character I never knew I needed. He's a lunatic who just does things. No thoughts of the consequences, no thoughts of how it affects other people, no thoughts about how it benefits him, really. He just does whatever pops into his mind at any given moment. It's insane how he has more personality than every new character this game introduces combined, and he barely even speaks. So after rescuing not Brittany, as well as her colleagues not Alf and not Charlie, she says that we need cells of a dog that doesn't have a leaf tail in order to create an antidote. And apparently there is one, but in order to find it, we need to track down Louis. And so, in the final area, we encounter our final trial, the Cavern of a King. Like I said before, I really like how relatively short the caves are in this game. They range anywhere from 1 to 6 floors, and they don't dominate the gameplay as a result. But the best part about every other cave in the game being so short is that it makes for a shock to the system when you get to this one and realize it's 20 floors. 20! Pikmin 2 has longer caves than 4 on average, but even that game doesn't have a 20-floor gauntlet. And it is a gauntlet. It's kind of insane the sheer amount of challenge this relatively easy game suddenly throws at you here at the end. But I wouldn't say it's an insane difficulty spike or anything. It's just a lot, you know? Right off the bat, you do battle with a poisonous version of the Puffstool, who can continually respawn poison hazards and enemies until you kill him. Yeah, that really sets the stage for what kind of experience you're getting into. Some of the other highlights include a floor where you do battle with 3 burrowing Snagrets, a floor where you fight 3 Emperor Bulblaxes, a battle against the Manet Legs surrounded by water, so good luck using anyone but blues here. I learned that you shouldn't do that the hard way. Hey, remember how scary the water wraith was? Barnacles! What could be worse than a giant water wraith?
Oh, I know! 2 giant water wraiths!
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world since you'll have purples, but it's still like, what the hell is happening? When did this game turn insane? Oh, but that's nothing compared to the next floor. It's a fight against the Empress Bulblax. Okay, that's not so bad. Let's just get in front of her and... Oh, we have to fight her in a cramped environment where she can easily roll over us unless we perfectly time this geyser boost? Yeah, okay, man, no problem. What? I really gotta give them props for significantly upping the difficulty on a boss simply by changing the arena you fight them in and nothing else. It was really creative. And cruel. Don't forget cruel. Huh. You know, I still feel like I skipped over a floor. Like I blocked out all the memories of one of them. Let's see. Well, what about sub-level 10? Did something happen there? Probably not, right? Oh my god! Any Pikmin player worth their salt will recognize this atrocity immediately. The Smoky Prog. Absent from the series since its horrific, unforgettable optional fight in Pikmin 1, is now back and required in order to progress. What a brilliantly evil roadblock for the halfway point of the final dungeon of the game. I don't think it's quite as difficult as it used to be, mainly due to the auto lock on. The instant death gloom is very much still here and can easily spell certain doom when combined with his roar attack that sends Pikmin scattering. Still, it's not quite as hard. And yet, they hit you with the most ominous and terrifying music track to ever come out of Pikmin. Just an unforgettable encounter. The Smoky Prog also shows up without its music in some of the night expeditions, but it's a lot cooler if you find him first here. Needless to say, Cavern of a King lives up to the high hopes you would have for a final challenge in a Pikmin game. I'd argue that the series only got better in that regard with each installment. I mean, you have the piss baby puzzles leading up to the final boss of Pikmin 1, the challenging and brutal Dream Den in 2, the nightmarish escort mission in 3 that has actual level design, and the relentless gauntlet of past foes with new challenges attached here in 4. Each game gets better and better in terms of building up the final boss. But what about the big battle itself? I have a bit of a confession to make. Maybe a week before the game came out, I was scrolling through Reddit and I saw this spoiler tagged post that said Pikmin 4 Final Boss. Spoilers! I thought about whether I should open the spoiler for 1 second, and then I said, yeah, sure, why not? And staring back at me was this demonic looking dog with Louie perched atop him. And just from this one image, I knew, oh yeah, that's the final boss. It just seemed too creative and too terrifying to be fake. And even though Louie wasn't revealed to be in the game beforehand, the idea that he would play a part in unleashing this monstrosity on you did not feel like a stretch in the slightest. I still wasn't 100% sure that Louie or the monster dog would be in the game. You never know with the leaks. But once I saw that piece of shit in the credits and freaked out, I knew, ah yeah, the creature is coming. I wouldn't say the spoiler dampened its impact. Rather, it made the anticipation of our impending encounter all the more enticing. If you're sensitive to spoilers though, I hope it didn't happen to you because wow, was anyone expecting Louie's new dog to look like this?
Get your fucking dog, bitch! It don't bite. Yes, it does!
And before you can recover from his intimidating size and visage, you hear his boss theme that honestly wouldn't be out of place in Metroid Prime. It really makes you feel like this is going to be the most intense battle you've ever faced in a Pikmin game. Which, like, it kinda is. This thing is fast, mobile, and can lay down a ton of hazards that hamper your approach. Much like the Titan Dweevil and Plasma Wraith before it, the ancient Sirehound forces you to deal with all sorts of elemental attacks. Ice, fire, electricity. It makes for a tense yet methodical battle where patience is key. Just wait till his tail is lowered, throw a couple purples on him, and knock him off balance. You rinse and repeat this strategy for a while, but it never gets dull thanks to all the new attacks he keeps cooking up to try and stop you, culminating in an element you have no defense against. Gloom. The same substance that insta-killed your Pikmin when the smoky prog came into contact with them. It's no different here, and you really need to watch your step when trying to approach this pooch. All of this makes for one of the most intense final battles, not just in the Pikmin series, but in any Nintendo game. Just an unreal experience that left me shaking by the end of it. Perfectly rounding out an unforgettable game. You catch Louie, retrieve the dog's collar, which gives you the particles you need to make the cure, and bada boom! Ochi is back to normal. We all scoff at that troublemaker Louie, which is honestly hilarious. In real life, they should have had him arrested for kidnapping and forcibly trying to turn people into leaf monsters. But I love the fact that they all play it off like, oh, that scoundrel Louie! What wacky thing will he do next? Murder? Terrorism? Hoo boy, what a silly character he is. Anyway, we all leave, Moss becomes the de facto leader of the Pikmin now, effectively ending her homophobia arc, and we even see the ancient Sirehound casually wandering around, implying that it was Louie's influence that caused it to attack us in the first place.
Oh, that scoundrel!
And that finally concludes Pikmin 4. Until Olimar's next adventure. Pikmin 4 is one of the most joyous gaming experiences I've ever had. One that surprised me at every turn and managed to deliver the most in-depth and complete experience out of the entire Pikmin series. It takes so much of what worked about its predecessors and effortlessly blends them together with a plethora of brand new concepts, making for a game that's an absolute treat for newcomers and longtime veterans of the series alike. It absolutely warms my heart to see that this is the highest selling game in the Pikmin series, and that Nintendo continues to promote it long after its release. It's all well deserved, and if you've never played a Pikmin game before, this might just be the perfect one to start with. I mean, all of them are on Switch, which is just miraculous. I'm so happy about that. But 1 and 2 are far more challenging than the modern games, and they might turn you off from the series. Unless you're looking for challenge, in which case, yeah, those would be better to start with. But Pikmin 4 is easily the most accessible entry point in the series. One that you will definitely get your money's worth out of, as its level of high quality content lives up to that $60 price tag and then some. Please, if anything I said over the course of this video sparked your interest at all, do yourself a favor and give Pikmin 4 a try. Hell, just download the free demo on the eShop right now. It's free! What do you have to lose? This is your chance to get into some of the greatest games Nintendo has ever produced. If you like what you play in the demo, just know there's way more where that came from if you pick up what is easily my favorite Nintendo Switch game of all time. Trust me, you won't regret it. And that's the entire Pikmin series talked about. That's right, I'm never making a video on Hey Pikmin, you can't make me. But looking at the main 4, the sheer amount of consistency in the series is absolutely staggering. 3 absolute masterpieces that stack up among my top 20 favorite games of all time. Plus the one game that isn't really my thing, but I still like despite what you guys believe. And hey, I totally get why it's a lot of people's favorite, and I'm not going to try and take that away from you. I think one of my favorite aspects about this quadrilogy is that no game is quite like the other. They all differentiate themselves from each other and stick out in their own special way. You got the one with the rigid time limit, the torture dungeon simulator, the multitasker's wet dream, and the laid-back expansive one with the doggy. Every single one of these will give you a new experience compared to the others, and I think that's wonderful. Pikmin is just so special and so dear to my heart, and the idea that I can help get people into this series is just so incredible. So with that said, now that I'm out of games to cover, is this the end of my Pikmin videos? No. Are you kidding? This is just the beginning. There are so many individual aspects of these games I can talk about or rank. Before the year is up, I'm gonna be coming at you with another Pikmin related video. And after that, I'll probably make even more, why not? The great Pikmin era of my channel has begun. You can't stop me from spreading the Pikmin agenda to everyone who will listen. Until next time, my fellow converts to the Church of Pikmin, good night, PNF 404.